Welcome in, and today we are looking at winners and losers of free agency and the NFL draft, including a host of veteran players and offensive units. A lot has changed, hasn't it, Head? And until free agency windows open again, we've got a bit of a better idea of the lay of the land, haven't we?
Yeah, I think pre-draft it's very uncertain, but post-draft things become a lot clearer, especially from a fantasy perspective.
Let's get stuck straight into it then, and we're going to go for a loser first. Harsh words of Mr. Sanders, but we've got to put him into that loser bracket from fantasy. We are talking about fantasy. That is what we're here to focus on. I am not interested in the negative hype. I'm not interested in the prank calls. I'm not interested in the rumored GM comments. I am worried about the question marks around the weaknesses in his game and putting that alongside fifth round draft capital. Putting that alongside Deshaun Watson, Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel also being on the roster. Put that alongside Dylan Gabriel being drafted 2 rounds ahead of him. We expected coming into the draft that we were going to have a quarterback you could potentially take towards the end of the first, if not definitely in the conversation early second. Where do you take him now? Round 3? I think that's the best bet, isn't it, really?
I mean, look at those 5 names on your screen: Deshaun Watson, Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders. Who on earth, as a fantasy player, do you draft? None of them. You can't trust any of them. I have no idea who's going to start. I don't think it's going to be Deshaun Watson, but after that, I'm not really sure. And as you say, we went into the draft expecting Shedeur Sanders to, go somewhere in the second or third round, potentially be in the mix for a starting spot. I really don't think he will be starting game 1. I don't think there's much chance of that at all. So yeah, when it comes to your rookie drafts, I think if you drafted him, you're taking a punt.
There's a point where you'll have lost inspiration and you go on then, I'll take a gamble. Would you take Shedeur Sanders over Dylan Gabriel?
Well, I think I probably would, because I think he's a better quarterback. I don't know why the Browns draft. Well, you can probably work out why the Browns drafted Gabriel ahead of Sanders, but surely Sanders is the better quarterback, regardless of what baggage goes alongside him. So you'd expect him, the cream, to rise to the top during training camp. But yeah, yes, I would, but I wouldn't trust either of them to start game 1.
And final point, do we trust the Browns not to completely mess it up regardless of what happens? No, it's what they do, isn't it? At the minute, they seem to just mess things up.
The Browns have got a history of just being relentlessly, I don't know, just being the Browns.
Well, we've covered the Browns. Let's stick with the AFC North Head. And I've just realised this is maybe the Bengals and Ravens among us, that we're starting with losers initially with the Browns and then across to the Steelers.
I just don't really know what the Steelers' game plan was in this draft. Like, they needed a quarterback, and for whatever reason, they passed on Sanders. They had many opportunities to draft him, and they decided not to. And we all know where this is going. It's going to the Steelers putting all their eggs in an Aaron Rodgers-shaped basket. And will that be a success? I don't know. I mean, Rodgers is, a Hall of Famer. Is he past it? Is he over the hill? Yes, to both of those questions. And it just doesn't really make sense to me. I don't know what their plan is. At best, they get a year out of Rodgers, and I don't know why they wouldn't have invested in a quarterback that they might have been able to kind of progress and bring on over the next couple of years. Don't get me wrong, I think Caleb Johnson, the running back, was a great pickup later in the draft, and I expect him to compete for touches, but I really don't understand what their draft strategy was.
No, I agree. Caleb Johnson is a player that I really, really like. We're going to talk more about running backs in general soon as well. I mean, those who watch on YouTube got the graphic on the side there. I mean, DK Metcalf doesn't look very happy, does he, Ed? This can't be what he was expecting, surely, to sign that big money contract and to make that move, to move from the Seahawks, he was expecting at least more certainty, I think would be fair to say, wouldn't it?
Indeed. And as I say, we all know where this is going. Well, they've left themselves with no other option. It's Rodgers or bust, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I'm sure Metcalf would be happy with that. But as I said, whether Rodgers is still up to, the NFL, being an NFL caliber quarterback, I don't really know if he is. And he hardly set the world alight at the Jets, did he? Taking into account the injuries, etc. But yeah, I think it's the Steelers have a great coach in Mike Tomlin, and regularly, every season after season, they put in great performance. So they probably will again. But to me, it seems quite clouded what they're doing.
Should we go for some positivity, Ed?
Yeah, we've been quite negative, haven't we?
Let's throw some positive in there. I would like to bring a winner to the table. And for me, a winner of this draft from a fantasy perspective is Justin Herbert. In 2024, when we were drafting our teams in 2024, you had Gus Edwards, you had J.K. Dobbins there. We expected Gus Edwards was going to be the lead back and Dobbins was, let's see what happens. Except for us, we were very positive on the J.K. Dobbins train. What he ended up getting was the worst season Gus Edwards has put together. Clearly, what was around him in Baltimore was perfect for his play style and his production. J.K. Dobbins, very, very good, but not always available. Lad McConkey come into the season. It was his rookie season. What we're going to get from him, we got what we expected. We got an excellent receiver showing high gameplay IQ and being a fantastic passing option for Justin Herbert. We saw Quentin Johnston be absolutely diabolical game after game and then be amazing for a game and always all forgiven. He's going to be brilliant. Now we're back to diabolical again. It's been up and down. Yet, despite that, Justin Herbert did all right for fantasy. And I'll go into those numbers a bit more in a minute. Let's think, though. We are adding in Najee Harris. We are adding in Amari Hampton. That is a bit muddy for fantasy. I'll talk about that shortly, but doesn't matter for Justin Herbert. He's got two competent running backs there. We've added Trey Harris. No longer do we need to rely on Quentin Johnston. He's down to wide receiver 3. We've added Mekhi Becton at guard. Adding to all of that, Horties and Harbaugh referencing possible trades to further consolidate that offensive line. It's looking positive and is trending in a good fancy direction for Justin Herbert. All those negatives from last year, he was pressured on 39% of dropbacks over 2024, but was still QB 12. Played every single game, had 8 top 12 finishes. And what's important is they all came after week 7. His first top 12 game was week 8. After that, he put 7 more on the board. 23 touchdowns. Yeah, all right. Not what we want for that fancy output. My early prediction for 2025, I reckon we're looking in that QB8 range, 28 to 30 touchdowns thrown in there as well. And I think people are a little bit tired of Justin Herbert. And I think he could potentially be a good value pick in possibly more so redraft than dynasty startups. But I think he could be having a really good bounce back season for him and becoming a real fancy, relevant, fancy, reliable player this year. Am I being a little bit too optimistic, or have we got some Justin Herbert goodness to come in 2025?
No, I don't think so. I think Justin Herbert, he's had a weird couple of seasons, hasn't he? He's had some quite niggly injuries that he's played through. And, you thought he had some big hitters with the likes of Mike Williams, and it never really worked out. But he's got some really strong young receivers there in McConkey, who had a brilliant rookie season, and Trey Harris is really exciting. And as you say, they've beefed up the O-line as well to improve that protection. And, I expect the Chargers to be competitive this season, which they haven't been recently. Justin Herbert is a phenomenal talent. What an arm, absolute rocket of an arm. And, maybe over the last couple of years, he's kind of dropped down the fancy pecking order. But I think you're exactly right. I think he could be an absolute bargain this year because based on his form the last couple of years, I think people are going to be down on him and maybe might sleep on him. So I think he could pick up a bargain.
Let's delay the fancy wisdom for just one moment, though, to give you a chance to minimize the screen. Head across to subscribe so that you can be updated whenever we drop lovely new fancy content. And also, if you can give us a thumbs up, a comment, and a share, we would appreciate it immensely as well. Edward, it's over to you for our next winner. And we're looking at a wider group at this stage, aren't we?
Yes, we are. And I mean, who'd have thought that we would be saying the Las Vegas Raiders are winners? I mean, they've been an afterthought the last couple of seasons, haven't they? But all of a sudden, they draft a they acquire a semi-competent quarterback in Geno Stone. They draft an absolute blue chip running back in Ashton Genty. They've got Brock Bowers, and then I'm really excited by Jack Beck as a second round draft pick as well. And then you look at Jacoby Myers, who they've got. I mean, where did you think Jacoby Myers finished last season? Wide receiver. Where did he finish?
It was really muddy at wide receiver, wasn't it? Because he might have missed time. I think Joby Macias, that's a very different name. Jacoby Myers, I think, was ever present. Remember, so I'm going to go 22.
Very good, Mark. He was 19th. So he was
far away.
A top 20 wide receiver in a year where we, were basically, jokingly saying it was Brock Bowers or bust. Myers still had a fairly solid season. So I think that is a decent wide receiver room in Jacoby Myers and Jack Beck. Of course, he's a rookie. You have to see how he does. Brock Bowers is a bit of a cheat code. I expect him to have another massive season. But yeah, I think the Raiders have an exciting offense. Will they pull up lots of trees? Will they make the playoffs? Possibly not. But I think when we did the deep dive on the Raiders last year, there wasn't much to say. But this year, I feel there's quite a lot of conversations to be had about fantasy relevant players.
Exactly that. And that was the note I'd written down for this, is that last year you're only interested in Devontae Adams, and some people weren't confident on Bowers because of tight end production for rookies in year one, but he was the only other person you're after. I mean, some idiots exist. Some people drafted Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. That's what some people would like to do. But I think you also look, though, Raheem Mostert. Are you out on him? I think he could be a canny best ball pickup later in your drafts as well. And I think it's an important thing, isn't it? When you're looking at rosters where there's so much change and you do have maybe not quite such flashy depth, is thinking about which format certain players have different value at which point as well. And the Raiders have gone from being of very little interest to being very interesting, really, haven't they?
Indeed. I mean, just looking at, Genty, Bowers, I mean, two absolute megastars over the next 5 years. And I do think the key to it all is Geno Stone. He's possibly an underrated quarterback, but I think the Raiders have done really well in picking him up. And I think he kind of ties it all together, hopefully.
Let's have some negativity, though, again, Ed. And we thought we were going quite broad with the whole offensive unit. We spoke about the Steelers offense on the whole as well. I'm going league-wide this time. I am looking at assorted running backs that are losers from this. So I was trying to pick a running back or two to talk about, and I realised that our tier of running backs that we might have been hanging on to in Dynasty, especially hoping to get another year or two of value out of, depending how well the draft went for landing spots. And it's blown a load of those players away. So we've just spoken about Genty. Most we knew it was going to happen. Most we were never having much hope for. And I think really anyone that had most has been living beyond the dream over the last couple of years, especially a couple of seasons ago. Zamir White, sorry, Tom, he's done. That is the end of Zamir White's season. Amara Hampton, everyone's thinking Najee Harris, what a great spot for him potentially. That's muddied. That J.K. Dobbins, I think he's back on that unrestricted free agent tag. Gus Edwards is out the door there. Travion Henderson, all of a sudden Stevenson is even more or less favourable than Mr. Disappointing has been for the last few seasons. Jerome Ford, who I've banged on about for the last 2 or 3 years, I'll forget about now because Judkins is clearly the lead back in town. RJ Harvey going to Denver. Has he really damaged McLaughlin or Estime? Probably not. I don't think anyone's that interested anyway.
Could be damaged, no.
Jalen Warren, is he going to get a run at it? Are they going to draft a lesser back? No, they've taken Caleb Johnson. Tyrone Tracy, people were hoping that Giants would do nothing at running back so we could get that value that people found from Tracy last year. Cam Scadaboo pops up. That's looking in jeopardy as well. And then I think one move that hinders players people would have maybe given up on, some people were maybe still going to be hoping to have one last roll of the dice. Bajal Tootin, which is a name I cannot wait to include in Heroes and Zeros next season, puts massive jeopardy on Travis Etienne, Tank Bisbee. Etienne has had every opportunity to be what he's constant regression as a pass catcher. That's worrying for him as well. However, I want to flip this around as well. I'm speaking about the veteran backs there this is impacted. You can say the exact same of all these situations for the rookie running backs if they don't hit in year one. So is it actually going to be Nijay that is the one that is retained next year? And Hampton, people are questioning. Stevenson, does he put any harm to Henderson? Ford, I'm clutching at straws here. Does Ford jostle for position with Judkins? I think Tracy Scatterby is going to be an interesting one. Travis Etienne is young enough to still be fancy relevant. Tank Bigsby, we've seen flashes from. If Tootin doesn't do the business, maybe that isn't crystal clear for him as well. Really, we've only got Genty and RJ Harvey who are locked on for their roles. But some of those players we were hoping would land in really, really clear spots. I mean, thinking of Hampton, Henderson, Judkins, Caleb Johnson, if one of those had landed in Denver, we're having very different thoughts and conversations about all of those players, aren't we, if that's where they landed? It's a bit messy, isn't it, in general?
I think that's the point you make exactly. And I'm glad you kind of flipped it around, because as you were talking, I was thinking, of course, the rookies could have great seasons, but at the same time, they could kind of fade into the background. Are there going to be any teams that end up with a Monty and Gibbs? Probably not. They really are very rare. And it's going to be fascinating to see who rises to the top. But when we're looking at it from a fantasy perspective, that makes it incredibly difficult for us. Like you say, if one of these not elite, but second-tier rookie running backs below Genty had ended up in Denver or Dallas, for example, it would have been, almost a home run. But that hasn't happened, and there's a lot of kind of uncertain situations that and when it comes to drafts, you're going to have to take a punt and just go with your gut, I suppose, rather than actually rely on kind of stats.
It's really selfish is what it is, isn't it, of these GMs really making it muddy. However, the exact opposite of selfish is signing yourself up to a charity best ball league. So why not make it TH Fantasy Football Bestball Bonanza, raising money for the Beast of Memory Cafe for a third year running, an amazing local charity over here just outside Nottingham in England for our American listeners who do amazing things for those living with dementia and their carers. Head over to ch_fancy_NFL on BlueSky and X to get yourself involved. And we will be very, very grateful. And you get to take part in a fantastic, large size best ball competition as well. Edward, the next loser is for you to discuss.
Yeah, it's the Saints, and I don't really understand where the Saints went. First round they drafted a really strong O-line. I like that pick. That was decent. But then second round, is it Sanders? Who's it going to be? They drafted Tyler Shaw. Is that how I'm pronouncing it?
I think I've heard Shook is the main way I've heard
is
it pronounced.
That right?
I think
Tyler Shook.
I think that's yeah.
It seems a big price for him, a really big price. He was in some of the rookie quarterback conversations, but he wasn't in our top five. Not that we're the kind of the be all and end all.
No, I mean we weren't sure how to pronounce his name. That's how much on our radar he was.
Yeah, exactly. And he's hardly a developmental prospect. He's nearly 26. I think he's played, looking down here, he started 32 games across 7 college seasons. So if he's at a ceiling, if he's got a ceiling, is he not already there? Where do they go with him? It just seemed a really odd pick when there were other quarterbacks to take. Clearly, they've seen something in him, and good luck to them. They might be able to find something within him. But does Tyler Shough start week 1? Is that what we're saying? What do you think?
With Carr's injury and uncertainty, quite likely. The post I saw on X that summed up the best was Tyler Shough is very similar to Derek Carr. He's there to be Derek Carr until Derek Carr's back, at least.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not a very long-term plan, is it? I don't know. I think in that situation, I've got no interest in talking about the Shedeur Sanders farce in great length at all. But would there have been better taking a gamble on that future-wise? Maybe. He could be a quarterback we're talking about for the next few years, because actually being safe pair of hands where everything else ticks around. My worry outside of that is, from a fantasy point of view, Alvin Kamara, great value last year, got one more year maybe. The QB play with such a dominant pass catching back is yet to be seen. Chris Olave, question mark after question mark after question mark. Hopefully, really hope we get to see the best of him, because he's such an exciting player outside of the fantasy value.
But you're not going to see the best out of him under Derek Carr or Tyler Shough, are you?
No, not at all. Derek Carr did his very best to make sure he got put into concussion-inducing situations over and over again. Rashid Shaheed, other than the Scott Fishbowl kick returner hyper last year, was he all that exciting other than the odd week of DFS? The only piece I'm interested in on the Saints is if Kamara drops to a nice value in a best ball or redraft league, and Devin Neal, to see what happens there, because I think it's going to be a reasonable cost in your rookie drafts and could pay you back, and you're not outlaying much capital to be a huge risk, are you?
No, you're not. I mean, I feel a bit for Saints fans. It just feels that I don't know what the thoughts of the front office is, and I can't see what their strategy is. And I'll go on record now and say I don't think Tyler Shough is like the next Bo Nix or anyone of that ilk. And I expect them to have a pretty kind of mediocre season.
I think we need to bring ourselves back around with some positivity. And my second winner and my first one of this chapter is someone who was, I think, quite unfairly criticised last year, given what was around him with regards to his O-line. And that is Caleb Williams, who I think is a massive winner from the free agency and draft process. We get the year 2 bump. That's always something we want to see with the quarterback. They've had a year to bed in. Remember, this idea of quarterbacks coming in from college pro-ready, in the grand scheme of the game, isn't a tried and tested model. A lot of quarterbacks work best when they grow into that role. You look at Josh Allen, didn't hit the ground straight away, being as elite as he was. Lamar Jackson didn't get to play towards the end of his first season. Obviously, there were question marks year 2. Joe Burrow is probably, out of our recent highly billed quarterbacks, one who came in the best year 1, but he was nowhere near what he's producing out at that stage as well. We've got the O-line being improved after a league high 68 sacks last year. All 3 interior positions have been upgraded with Joe Tooney, Jonah Johnson, and Drew Dolman, and drafted Ozzy Trapillo and Luke Newman for some depth as well. Adding the new coach in Ben Johnson, Declan Doyle in an offensive coordinator who was very vocal about needing to address that O-line. He came in realistic, came in and has made those changes. They've drafted Colston Loveland and Luther Burden. And that really is putting that icing on the cake for Caleb Williams. He already had fantastic receiving core around him. Cole Kmet, no, he's not elite, but he's relatively useful for a quarterback. We spoke last year, who do you go for the wide receivers with so much there? Was it Adunze? Was it more? But throw Luther Bird, throw Koslov, and that does become a little bit muddy for fantasy who we take there. Doesn't matter for Caleb Williams. I think he's got everything at his disposal now. QB 16 in 2024. I'm going, it's got to be top 12 in 2025. Surely, or the writing is on the wall.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of hype about the Bears last season, wasn't there, with Williams and their receiving room. And ultimately they lost it in the trenches on the O-line. And I think, yes, I'm excited about the offensive players they've drafted, but as you say, it's the trades, it's the people they've acquired on the O-line that is going to make the big difference to protect Caleb Williams and give him that chance, because he's a quality quarterback with a good arm, a good eye, and he's got the weapons there now. I mean, Colston Loveland is a big upgrade on Cole Kmet, who's incredibly reliable. But yeah, DJ Moore is your wide receiver 1. And then a Dunze and Burden offering support. I think that the Bears are in a much better situation this year to make the playoffs, and they're incredibly fantasy relevant across the board, apart from maybe at running back. DeAndre Swift. I'd be interested to see if they do any business at running back before the season starts, or are they going to be happy with Swift?
I'm literally just thinking now, I think Gus Edwards on a vet minimum contract potentially would be a great acquisition for them, as that punching the ticket in the 5. It could be a very, very useful pickup. Yeah, you'd expect something to happen there, wouldn't you? But yeah, I think you're right. I'm very interested in Caleb Williams this year. And I'm very interested to see where he shakes out ADP when we get into our August drafts, especially. Let's take it home then, Ed. Who are we going to go for our final winner of the 2025 free agency and draft process?
Well, this is a pretty quick one. We discussed it on our did we mention it on a rookie draft? We mentioned it on a previous show, but it's quite straightforward. I think it's a big win for Trevor Lawrence and the Jags. I think they have. And it's based around one person. It's based around Travis Hunter. They drafted up, traded up. Sorry, they gave away, their first round pick next year and a few other things. But Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. as weapons for T-Law is genuinely exciting. You look at the running backs here on the screen there, Etienne and Bigsby. Etienne owes the franchise a lot after last year's horror show. And, Bigsby maybe flattered to deceive over the last couple of years. So maybe they're struggling a little bit at running back. And you could argue at tight end, they've lost Evan Engram. So that is potentially an issue. But I just think it's so exciting, that wide receiver duo, Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, who's an absolute generational talent, who's clearly going to get rep after rep at wide receiver. And this is the year for T-Law. Not make or break. You've got your weapons. Go out and show us how good you are, Trevor.
Yeah, I agree. Now or never, I think, for T-Law. A down season this year, the Jags have got to be looking elsewhere, haven't they?
Yeah,
especially with the pieces around there. Obviously, I've not got up on the screen there because he's, according to ESPN, he's currently 3rd on depth chart. I think that's just how it comes out of the draft. I don't see that being the case at all when we enter the season or beyond. Bashal Tootin, I think, has got a very good opportunity to assert himself a solid role there as well. And Edward, we forgot about the enigma, the wide receiver who does all of the work consistently without ever letting anybody down.
You're not talking about dishonest Gabe.
Dishonest Gabe Davis is there.
Why is he not on the graphic? Surely he should be front and center.
I'm keeping him a secret so I can pick him for DFS every week for that 1 week out of 17 where he puts up more than 15 points. Jags feel like a team we've kind of been saying this about a little bit, but they really hit with Brian Thomas Jr. last year. They really, really did. Throw Travis Hunter. He's going to be adding value. Absolutely has to add value on there as well. And for defensive units to be going, right, who are we covering? Travis Hunter or Brian Thomas Jr., it's going to open up all sorts of options. You're right. Tight end is a question mark at the minute. Brenton Strange, Johnny Munt, Hunter Long. This is a situation where I worry. I'm not sure what their cap space is, but there has been that little bit of talk about whether Mark Andrews is available for trade. If they had the cap space, that is an exact move I would be looking to pull the trigger on all day long for a team like the Jags at the minute, because that could be the last missing piece of the puzzle for them. Obviously, I hope it doesn't happen, but surely it's at least in their thought process to see who might answer a call to trade a tight end away. I think that wraps up then, doesn't it, Ed?
Well, it's a lovely little kind of glide through some of the pros and cons of the draft.
But remember, guys, the real winners are you, the viewers at home, getting to see all this lovely fancy content. So please do give us a subscribe and make sure you check out everything else we do over the off season as well. We are short into our YouTube journey, but we're having a lovely time, and we appreciate all of the kind words and all of the views we're getting as well. So please continue to do that. Tell your friends, see if you bring a few more views along. We would very much appreciate it. But I think we've spoken about winners or losers enough. I think I've prattled on enough at the end, Ed. Can you get our lift in, please?
Of course. Malcolm, take us home.
You have been listening to Pestle and Ed of TH Fantasy Football. For more content, follow TH_fantasy_NFL on Instagram and Twitter.